From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Sophos warns of increased stealth among Chinese hackers. Bug bounty program yields 34 flaws in open source AI tools, and Columbus drops the case against a whistleblower. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we're ready for some insight, opinion, and expertise from our returning guest, Ken Athanasio, the CISO over at VF Corporation. It's been about 2 years, Ken, since we've last had you on. Thank you so much for making the time. Got a lot of catching up. We'll start out. How was your week in cybersecurity?
Pretty good actually. We're like most retailers, and if you don't know who VF Corporation is, we have Vans, North Face, Timberland, Eastpak, etc. We got a few other brands, but we're entering our holiday freeze, and we wrapped up this week with our final bit of testing, and we're look like we're in pretty good shape. So we're hoping for a real good holiday season.
Here's wishing all of the VF Corporation brands a happy and safe holiday quarter coming up. That we also want to wish a happy and safe quarter to our sponsor for today, Vanta, compliance that doesn't suck too much. Remember to join us on YouTube Live. Do so. Go to CISOseries.com, hit the events drop down, and look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. If you click on it, you will join us. There's no shenanigans there. We're not going to phish you or send you to a malicious webpage or anything like that. Just click the image. I promise you, it'll be fine. And be sure to contribute your comments in the chat. I already see CCL and the big boss man, David Spark, in there. Having some fun. Make sure you are joining if you've never done so. It is a lot of fun. Before we jump into news, just a quick reminder that Ken's opinions are his own. They're not necessarily those of his employer. Just that context. Keep it in mind throughout the course of the show. We've got about 20 minutes, so let's jump right into it. The big story we led off the show with this week, Sophos warning of increased stealth among Chinese hackers. I think this story really plays into a lot of the themes that we've been seeing really throughout this whole year here. The cybersecurity firm has released a report that shows the evolving tactics of Chinese advanced persistent threat groups over the past 5 years, and it's seen a notable shift from widespread indiscriminate attacks toward narrow targeting of high-value organizations. The report says that CVE exploitation was the most common initial access vector used in these attacks, although cases of initial access using valid administrative credentials from the LAN side of the device were also observed. So, Ken, like I said, an intriguing story here because it seems to highlight two vulnerabilities that have a very human connection. The first being CVE exploitation, which seems to depend on timely attention and patching by human operators, or at least weighing the risk of how soon do we patch versus maybe disruption to productivity and that kind of stuff. And secondly, gaining access through valid administrative credentials. One can assume either by social engineering, access to breached data, or just organizations failing to deactivate credentials of people who have left. A lot of tackle there. What's your take on this?
Yeah, if anybody's surprised that the Chinese and other threat actors out there are shifting from these very noisy attacks, spray and pray type of approach to just to these very focused and targeted attack against specific companies, individuals, entities, etc. If you're surprised by that, you haven't been paying attention. The Chinese have gone through a bit of an evolution, I think, and the teams that they have actually doing this right have been maturing over the years. And so this is, I think, a normal evolution, and I do think that we're going to see this continued low and slow attack vector. And as far as exploitation of CVEs, that's going to continue. That's a staple. You're going to see more zero-day exploits, and social engineering it is and always will be a primary mechanism for breaking into somebody's defenses. So gaining those credentials, right? And if you don't have the right controls in place, such as identity protection, such as multi-factor, et cetera, you're going to get got.
Obviously we've seen, like this report mentions, we've seen the shift over the past 5 years. Is this just a hey, we first of all, we all need to be doing the security basics. We all need to be above that security poverty line. Does seeing a report like this make you think differently about any kind of tactics or strategy, or is these are, listen, whether they're doing spray and pray or they're doing highly targeted attacks, we didn't make sure we have. Does it not change necessarily your approach? I'm wondering.
So you have to continue to get more sophisticated as the bad guys get more sophisticated, and that's why I talk about you need to understand. You should have user and entity behavior analytics running inside your environment. You need to have least privileges. You need to make sure that you're doing islanding. You're doing there's all these new techniques on how you actually protect your environment, section off your environment. And make sure that lateral movement inside your environment is A, difficult, and B, easier to detect. And there's a ton of different things that you can and should do. So we're well beyond the point of M&M security where you've got a hard candy shell and you're soft on the inside, right? We're well beyond that being an acceptable thing. You have to harden yourself all the way down through your environment.
You have to be the everlasting gobstopper
That's
of
right.
cybersecurity.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, David Cross, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't think we have a specific zero-day announcement from today, but our next story is Bug Bounty Program yields 34 flaws in open source AI tools. Not bad, David. Okay, I'm trying here. The flaws, which were discovered in open source AI and machine learning tools, were disclosed last week as part of Protect AI's Hunter Bug Bounty Program. The report includes 18 high-severity flaws ranging from denial of service to remote code execution. Security researchers from Protect AI stated, "We found the tools used in the supply chain to build the machine learning models that power AI applications to be vulnerable to unique security threats. These tools are open source and downloaded thousands of times a month to build enterprise AI systems." So AI has become, obviously a monster in terms of being a must-have for all types of organization, not breaking any news there. But within the chaos of rushing to adopt AI solutions, caution potentially thrown to the wind. How would you advise people to balance their desire to access the best AI tools against a good dose of caution?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a difficult one to answer. AI is absolutely the buzzword of the day, and there's a good reason for it. I'm a firm believer that entities, corporations that don't take advantage of this new capability and really build it out within their environment are going to fall behind. I think it's going to be a competitive, not just a competitive advantage. It's going to be a foundational to be competitive, to have AI within your environment. That said, it's obvious that there's a whole lot of worries and concerns that we as security practitioners should have about AI, and this isn't a surprise either, right? The fact that we have a whole bunch of open source tools that are being generated very, very quickly. And oh gosh, they have vulnerabilities and issues within those tools. Again, shocker, right? So
Software has vulnerabilities. Not exactly a new headline.
Wow. Yeah. We're also going to see that the software that's generated from these AI tools is also going to have vulnerabilities, right? And it's going to, be errors or hallucinations from the AI engines themselves, or it's going to be human errors. So the only thing I can say is that I'm really happy that we actually have a robust bug bounty program going against these sorts of tools. I'm a huge fan of bug bounty programs. I think they do a fantastic job. They're not enough, but they absolutely do a fantastic job of helping to secure these things before folks, really get into play with them. I would say that anything that you're doing, right, should be done in as much of a walled garden as you possibly can. Protect these tools, these engines, right? Again, section them off, right? Segmentation is your friend. That's only useful up to a point, but not doing it is probably not the right idea. Be cautious of what tools you use. Especially if you're using open source, although I don't think that the commercial stuff is going to be bug-free and vulnerability-free. Nothing is.
Well, if we want to hit on a theme that we cover on this show all the time, we're talking about third-party risk. We were just talking. There's an episode of Defense in Depth from late last month where we're talking about securing Gen AI, and one of the big things was tons of SaaS applications are building out AI capabilities that are using, I'm sure, a lot of open source components in there, and that's a situation where You have to evaluate what data are you even, are you getting out there? Are they training on that data? What is what is your risk profile when you're talking about that? Adds a whole nother level to that. So yeah, like sandboxing to a point for sure is useful for like explicit tool use, but just kind of thinking about all of this in general, there are limits to how I guess how secure your sandbox is when it comes to this kind of
Well,
stuff
and
too.
not only that, but sandboxes tend to limit your capabilities as well, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, you have to balance it a little bit. One of the things that concerns me about some of the open source tools, right? And there's kind of a conflicting argument, right? Some people say, well, because it's open source, it's more secure because people are focused on it. There's a lot of people using it. There's some potential to that, but also because it's open source, there's not a lot of control over the code, and people do some weird things sometimes. So it's a balancing act.
All right. Well, maybe one thing to help us with that balancing act. Our next story: Google claims first vulnerability found using AI. Hey, we got one for the win here. Google's Big Sleep project, a collaboration between Project Zero and DeepMind, recently uncovered its first real-world vulnerability: a stack buffer overflow in SQLite, found with the help of an AI modeler in October, or excuse me, found with the help of an AI model in October. This flaw went undetected by traditional fuzzing, sparking interest in AI as a supplementary tool for vulnerability research. There is an argument that this might not be the first use of an LLM to discover a vulnerability. A security researcher with NeuroEngine said he discovered a zero-day using an LLM back in April. He published those results in June, but he told InfoSecurity magazine he believes Google's announcement was just an honest mistake. But honest or not, whether we say it started in April or started, yesterday, it seems like we're increasingly going to have, this in kind of the vulnerability detection quiver. Ken, are you optimistic about its potential?
I am. I have to say though that first bit that the comment from the other researcher in the article of gosh, they could have just Googled it was absolutely hilarious. I thought that was fantastic.
Good
I
good
really thought
sense
that
of
was
humor
great.
about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the 100%, right? I mean, this is what we should be using AI for, right? We should be using it to augment our capabilities. Is it going to replace fuzzing? No, probably not. But could it be a significant tool to leverage against these? Yeah, for sure. And we're going to see this more and more, right? Vulnerability detection. We're going to see, you're going to get bug bounty programs that are leveraged by AIs before too long.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much potential here. And I don't want to oversell the potential. We're a long way from an AI getting to the point where it's actually going to replace any type of a security researcher, but augment a security researcher, help them, do a better job. Yeah, 100%. And that's what we should be doing with these tools. The bad guys are using AI already against us in multiple different ways, and we need to leverage that for defensive purposes as well.
And CCL does note in the chat, the AI did not find the first one, but it learned from a patch to an existing vulnerability to find others similar in the code base. It's certainly an important distinction. Thank you so much for that, CCL. I do think that, but that still is hugely valuable, especially when you're dealing with massive code. I'm not saying particularly SQLite or anything like that, but when you're dealing with giant software projects, the ability to kind of scale, I guess, human expertise, and that kind of stuff, hugely valuable as well. But thank you for that note, CCL. And Sean, I see you in there saying using AI to discover AI vulnerabilities. We've already started stacking the AI turtles. It's AI turtles all the way down, Sean. We already know this. It's hopeless. We just have to embrace it and hope the turtles don't topple over. Before we move on to our next story, though, we have to spend a few moments with our sponsor for today, Vanta. As third-party breaches continue to rise, the companies are increasingly becoming vigilant, which means more time spent on manual security reviews. With Vanta questionnaire automation, security and compliance teams can complete security reviews up to 5 times faster, giving you time back to focus on running your security and compliance programs. Over 8,000 global companies like ZoomInfo, SmartRecruiters, and Noibu use Vanta to save time on security reviews. Visit Vanta.com to learn more about questionnaire automation. That's Vanta.com. All right, our next story here. Schneider Electric breached for a second time this year. Schneider Electric confirmed a breach on its developer platform after a threat actor named grep claimed to have stolen 40 gigabytes of data from the company's Jira server. The intruder reportedly used exposed credentials and a mini Orange REST API to scrape 400,000 rows of user data, including 75,000 unique email addresses and full names of Schneider Electric employees and customers, though the company emphasized their products and services remain unaffected. GREP, who is part of a newly formed hacking group called International Contract Agency — I don't know all of them use Linux commands for their handles, although that would be kind of awesome — had threatened to leak the data if the company did not acknowledge the breach. So, Ken, I just some context here for this. Schneider Electric, kind of big, important company. How serious is this? Do you see this as a dangerous leak of data, or more dangerous in terms of the method by which the breach happened? Or is the greater danger just to the company's reputation at this point? Second one in a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old adage, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is invulnerable after they've been penetrated before, but the methodology that they talk about in here is that should have been taken care of. This again goes back to fundamentals, right? Are you exposing developer instances where you don't need to? Do you have multi-factor against them? Are you so I don't know the full context of exactly what happened, right? And we may never know. But this looks to me like there should have perhaps been a little bit of a better comprehensive review of what they have exposed in their environment. The data that was taken, I mean, that sounds it's not social security numbers, not birth dates, right? So it sounds like it's important. It sounds like some of their IP may have been stolen, which could be a problem. I just it's definitely a reputational hit to get popped twice in 1 year.
Yeah, that and it's one thing when we see, because we see this a lot of times with municipalities or healthcare systems and stuff like that. But Schneider Electric should not be hurting for cybersecurity resources, right?
Right. Yeah, it's one thing, like you say, for a municipality or a government agency to get popped twice, right? Because they're slow, they don't have a whole lot of money to spend. But a critical infrastructure.
Yeah. I always think of the Jack in the Box rule. Like, it doesn't apply here. Like, the best time to eat a Jack in the Box is after they get busted for a healthcare violation.
Right.
So, I guess that does not apply in cybersecurity.
Evidently not.
Lesson learned today.
Yeah.
All right. Next up here, Columbus drops case against whistleblower. Over the summer, we covered the Resida ransomware attack against the city of Columbus, Ohio. Go Bucks. The group leaked 3.1 terabytes of stolen data from the city, which officials claimed was encrypted and corrupted. So, kind of hard to make use of. However, security researcher David Leroy Ross, also known as Connor Goodwolf, because why not, claimed the data was intact and accessible online. The city subsequently sued Ross for damages and sought in order to stop him from discussing the data leak. Now the two parties have agreed to drop the case. Ross got the case dismissed with prejudice, which means the city can't sue him again for the same thing, but agreed to a permanent injunction to only share data related to this leak considered in the public record with written approval from the city. So, Ken, almost every show there's a story where I feel like I have to look over some metaphorical glasses in a school marmy style, and this is the one for this week. David Ross wasn't exactly the bad guy here. I'm curious, what do you make of these developments? Did it all end up working out in the wash?
Well, I think it was a pretty bad decision to go after him and sue him for this. It may not have been the greatest decision to tout this to the press. We don't know. Again, we don't know all the details, right? Mm-hmm. Did he notify them first that, hey, by the way, you have a problem, and get ignored, and then decide that, hey, this is important, and people need to be aware of this? Was it the classic whistleblower case, or did he just say, hey, you know what, they lied, I'm gonna go pop up? I don't know. Regardless, right, the idea of the city going out and suing him, if this is something they wanted to keep quiet, that's not the way to keep quiet. Because guess what? You're going to have a whole bunch of security practitioners going, hey, what's this mean to us in the future? It was a bad move on their part. I don't think he was the bad guy from what I know of this, right? It doesn't sound like he did much of anything wrong, right? They made a statement that was incorrect. He exposed the fact that it was incorrect, and they didn't like it too much.
Yeah, I always chalk this up. I always chalk this like, never attribute to malice what is incompetence. I don't think incompetence necessarily, but I sub that for overly litigious, litigious
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of situations where, like, a lot of times when people get upset with like terms of service, I always think a lawyer put that in there and didn't realize that this was like trampling on the First Amendment or something. I kind of feel like to your point, they didn't mean to. We're already down. Why are we trying to make like a First Amendment or like the rights
Right.
of challenge the the ability for cybersecurity whistleblowers and stuff like that.
Well,
So
we've got a
yeah,
couple of comments in here that hey, he did try and reach out and was ignored until it actually got picked up by the media. So that is definitely. I mean,
yeah,
again, a researcher trying to help out and say, hey, you may have thought that this was encrypted and not accessible, but it is, right? And now you have some legal obligations to to notify it, etc. And then to be ignored, right, until you
yeah.
that's again bad juju from the city.
For sure. All right, and our last story here: Australia plans social media ban for teens. Described as world-leading legislation to ban children under 16 from social media, the law will be tabled in Australia's parliament next week and is aimed at mitigating the harm social media is inflicting on Australian children. The ban would apparently not apply to young people already on social media. I guess they're a lost cause. Parental consent will not be considered, meaning there would be no exemptions. At the same time, the government says that the onus would be on social media platforms to show they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. As noted by the BBC, previous attempts at restricting access, including by the European Union, have largely failed or faced backlash from tech firms. Questions remain over how implementation would work, given there are tools which can circumvent age verification requirements, such as lying. So, Ken, it seems like another. I got to get the school marmy glasses and look down my Aquiline profile here. The way this law is written makes it seem doomed from the start, being kind of vague, unrealistic, and also just making kids jealous of other kids. Not cool. We all appreciate the dangers that social media pose to kids. Like, not certainly don't want to underplay that, but telling them not to do something is the best way to get them to want to do that thing even more. Is this political theater? Is this genuine? Is this a genuine attempt at a solution that maybe is not the most well thought out? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Whether or not it's just political theater, or if they just don't really have a clue, because
With
it's one of the
politicians,
two.
it can. Yeah, with politicians, it could be both.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of the two, because this is not going to work. I mean, there's no question it's not going to work, right? So don't get me wrong, right? Social media and the exposure of our kids, frankly, our adults to social media, and the algorithms that drive stories to particular people, and frankly, that can radicalize people and really feed some dark thoughts, is a problem. I mean, there's a serious problem associated with this. And the way that the algorithms that are written for these actually drive content, maybe instead of saying, hey, we're going to ban it for teams, maybe we should consider actually talking about trying to regulate how these algorithms drive content. And I know that would be very difficult to do. And that's the bread and butter of these social media companies. It's how they make money, right? So I don't expect that it's a strong likelihood that we'll get to do that. But we can put pressure on the social media companies to do things around, hey, let's try and moderate some of the content that's going on, and let's try and make sure that we understand the profiles of the people that are viewing this content, because you easily can pick up what the age groups are, etc. And you can moderate some of the content that's going to these kids, and try and humanize the algorithms a little bit, maybe try and get a little bit of the evil out of the system. That would be great. But this is a serious problem.
Yeah. Oh, and definitely. And Cece, I'm totally, not to forget, like, yeah, the bullying at scale that you cannot get away from. Like, I don't want to underemphasize that enough as being this extraordinarily serious issue. We've seen all sorts of mental health impacts going back to that, on top of everything else. So an extraordinarily serious issue. I do wonder if this is the usual tech regulation dance in reverse. Usually it's tech offers to make some reforms so that this legislation doesn't come, so they don't have to write the bill, right? Like Microsoft writes that book every single time. They did that with facial recognition. They've been doing that basically since, they almost got broken up by the DOJ. And so I think maybe this is Australia going, hey, you guys aren't doing enough here. We're going to start the dance instead of letting you guys lead that there. So I do think, I mean, just in terms of practicality, though, I always have to think like messaging apps will still exist, right? Like if you are like, because messaging apps like are already like so much effectively social networking is going on in those. So a lot of the issues you want to talk about, no moderation, you want, all of these issues, but also it's just WhatsApp or it's just iMessage and all that kind of stuff. Yes, there are tools on there, and I don't want to say it's completely the Wild West, but kids are going to find ways to, one, use tech, two, to be horrible to each other.
Yeah.
Does that mean we shouldn't do anything? No. I don't think like a blanket ban is right. Ken, I think you're on the right track there, of kind of, hey, you have to meet society. You have to meet parents and society, maybe a little bit of halfway, give us some tools. I also think in general, we were now like 2 generations or a generation into like living with social media as a thing. And I think that as a society, we better understand like, oh no, this isn't always like a net positive.
That's right.
Like we as a society, we can make choices about how we want to do all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, CCL, yeah, a human problem exacerbated by technology. Hey, welcome to Cybersecurity Headlines. All right, before we get out of here, Ken, was there any story that was a thumbs up or an eye roller for you this week?
I think the one we just covered, right, really kind of struck a note to me. I've seen, cyberbullying occur ever since people started carrying pagers, right? It's not something that's going to go away. But I do think that the way that we've embraced technology, the way that we have so many social media platforms and the ubiquitousness of it, and the fact that these algorithms are really, really dangerous, I think has really caused it's ramped the problem up 1,000-fold. If we don't do something, and I don't know what the right answer is, right? I'm not the genius for today, but if we don't do something about trying to humanize and take some of the evil out of the social media platforms and the algorithms, we're going to continue to see this drive people to suicide, create hatred, division, etc. And I think it's something that we really should be focused on and address. Again, I don't have the solution for it though.
Well, but you did have some fantastic insights on this show. Ken Athanasio, the CISO over at VF Corporation, I truly appreciate you coming back on the show for your time, for your expertise. This was a blast. We'll have to have you back on again. Thank you so much.
Thanks much. Appreciate being here.
And where can people find you online if they are so inclined?
LinkedIn is probably the best way to get me.
Excellent. We will have links to that in our show notes. Thanks also to our sponsor for today, Vanta, compliance that doesn't suck too much. Thanks to our audience today. A lively discussion going on here. CCL, Sean Kelly. I saw Kevin Farrell even checking in, even though he couldn't join the show today. Kevin, we always appreciate you listening, whether it's live or later. So thank you for that. Can't always get all your comments up there, but your comments make the show better. We're looking at them. They're informing what we're saying. Hey, we try to give attribution. That's all I'll say. We'll try to give attribution. So if you haven't done that before, make sure you come back next week. We'll be here at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Join in the chat. It's a lot of fun. And you can also make sure you are coming back each and every day for Cybersecurity Headlines every single day. Give us about 6 minutes. You can get your daily news fix. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Stroffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.